Welcome back, everybody. Draskyl here once again. Today, we are talking about drafting again. That's right, we're talking about drafting again. Why drafting? Because, well, as many of you may or may not know, I do play quite a few pubs, and I find that there are situations where people either don't know what to pick or can't figure out what is good, or they have a late pick and then their pick is either self-countered or so on and so forth, right? We've all been there. Some guy picks a hero, we see it, we go, oh my god, why would you ever pick X, Y, or Z in this game? So we're going to go through a very high-level draft. We're going to look at the heroes and try to be very objective about what they can do, what they can't do, and just try to give people some form of direction as to when a pick is good and when it's not good. Now, there are a couple of criteria that you can use as a rule of thumb to say, this pick is just strong with our heroes, or this pick is not strong with our heroes, so on and so forth. But the general rule of thumb is that in the draft, the later you go, the better your pick should be because you are given more information to work with. The opening heroes are usually the ones that have the hardest games because the pick phase goes 2 heroes, then 2 heroes, then 1 hero. So the first 4 heroes that are picked usually have the hardest time because that gives each team 3 more subsequent picks to counter whatever it is that you're doing, right? So naturally, that means that we're going to have supports, and sometimes maybe like an offlaner, or sometimes maybe a mid hero if it's just generically strong, picked in the early part of the game, because then the counter picking isn't as impactful. So let's go ahead and hop right in. We're just going to hit play, and we're just going to go through the draft, and we're going to say, hey, this is strong because of this. This is what counters it. And we have a first pick Mirana, which is, to my knowledge, this is normally played as a 4. I don't think I've seen any other position Mirana lately, but for context, I have not seen the drafting order of this game. We're just kind of going through it blind, so you guys get a more organic thought process out of me, and it's not, you know, this is not at all scripted. Okay, so Snap and Mirana. Let's talk about these 2 heroes in a vacuum so we can better assess what the enemy team would do in response once they see these heroes, and what we can do to play around these heroes. Mirana, if it is a 4, is typically a pretty solid laner. Her attack range is over 600. I believe it's around 630. Her damage is decent. She can use arrow to kill the range creep in lane, which then pressures the lane and causes the 1 and the 5 to feel a little bit overwhelmed with creep aggro, because if you're trading into a wave and you don't have a range creep and they do, then you obviously are going to take more damage because the range creep does more damage. So if you're one of those players who gets annoyed at your Mirana arrowing the range creep in the lane, they're actually supposed to do that so that the lane gets pressured harder so that you can get a pull and then the lane goes nicely. So outside of that, Mirana roams. She can help you secure runes. She has Moonlight, which is basically a secondary smoke that the enemy team's going to have to be aware of. She can farm pretty decently, even just arrowing large creeps every once in a while. Normally you do it to the lane, but you can do it to the camps aside the lane too. And then she kind of can build whatever. She can either go for support items, she can go for right-click items. She is a jack of all trades when it comes to her inventory. It's kind of just whatever the game calls for. And she kind of just does her damage, throws out arrows. Really nice to combo with other stuns, obviously, so that's something that we can keep in mind for the later picks. Whatever is walking to this Mirana's lane, you're going to want to think, maybe like I want a stun, like a Sand King, maybe a Mars, maybe a CK off lane, like whatever, right? Just pick a stun with another stun. That gives you a really strong lane. Super, super easy guideline to follow. So in Snapfire's case, this hero is also pretty strong in lane. The Little Shredder is quite potent even after the nerf, does a lot of damage. Good lane presence, offers a stun, offers a slow in addition to the stun, but not until a little bit later. And then you have very high damage with the ultimate, and you're again looking for setup. So we already have 2 heroes on our team that love what? They love to have other stuns that are applied before they can cast their skills. Because if that hero's stunned, then they can get arrowed. They can get hit by Mortimer Kisses. They can get hit by Cookie. They can get hit by Scatterblast. Like all of these abilities, they want somebody else to stun. Right? It's very simple. They are follow-up heroes. Both of these heroes, Snap, Mirana, they want to follow up. They want to press their skills on somebody who's already stunned or already slowed, and that's how they apply the majority of their damage. Right? Super straightforward, super easy. So let's look at what the enemy team picks.
Hello, it's your turn to pick.
We see a Tiny, so another Roamer, and an Earth Spirit. Okay, so this is kind of... this is a little bit weird, right? You don't normally see Tiny Earth Spirit picked together, because more often than not, at least lately, you've seen Tiny in more of the 4 role. People are starting to play it more as a core now. So like more mid Tiny, more safe lane Tiny, maybe even off lane Tiny. Again, I haven't seen how this draft plays out, so I have no idea where this guy's going. What I will say is that Tiny is really strong at bursting the weaker roamy type heroes like Mirana. And they also have a tendency to get items like Blink Dagger. So you go in, you cast your moves, you are the initiator, and you are the applicator of your own damage. So this is what you would call a self-sufficient ganker. Tiny is one of the very few of these that are kind of left in the game that auto-combo themselves. Other heroes are like Void Spirit, Amber Spirit. They can use all of their moves, and they don't need anybody else. If they have their item, they can go in, apply their damage, apply their disable. That's an avenue for you to start a fight. Earth Spirit is similar, but this guy actually doesn't need items. He's also one of those, I guess you could call combo heroes, who all of his abilities kind of chain together. And then he rolls in, he uses the grip to silence, he uses the boulder smash to slow, and then if he has it, he magnetizes and he applies his damage, right? So the first layer of both of these teams is Dire needs follow-up. Their heroes are a little bit squishy. Snap is actually pretty squishy despite being a strength hero, and Mirana has very low health. So I would say, opening into this, as a Mirana, I'd be like, ooh, these heroes kind of just kill me, right? If I get rolled on, if I get silenced, if I get stun tossed, I just die. So that's something that he as a player is going to have to keep in mind. Maybe he changes his itemization based on this. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But, you know, it's just things that you have to put in your brain and be like, okay, they have high burst. Maybe I have to play safer. Maybe I have to, you know, build an item to live through the combo, whatever. So for Radiant, they got really high burst. They already have 2 initiators. And then Dire have 2 follow-up heroes with no initiation. They both do a good amount of damage. We'll put that on the record too. Both teams do a lot of damage, and it's almost all magic. The only physical damage between all 4 of these heroes is the snap. And that's through the E button, the little shredder. So now if we're going into the second phase and we're going, what do I want to pick? If I see these heroes on my team, what makes sense for me to pick when I have either the Mirana and the Snap or the Tiny and the Earth Spirit? So we'll go over Dire first, because I don't want to see the third pick. I know it's going to pop up right now, and I could just look at it and be like, okay, this is why they picked it. But the whole purpose of this video is so that you can look at these types of heroes on your team and be like, I know a hero that would pair well with this because they offer me X or they offer me Y. I know that I have follow-up heroes. I know that I have heroes that want to sit in the back. Snapfire and Mirana are backline heroes. They never want to be the person in the middle of the fray. The only time they ever commit is when the fight is already won. And if they're caught out, they just die. So stuns or silences just kill us. So if I'm picking with these 2 heroes, I'm thinking, I probably either want to be something that offers a stun and sits in the front, which would be my first go-to. I would immediately, if it were me, I would immediately think Sand King or CK or Mars, just somebody that's going to be able to stand there and apply a stun, because it fulfills both things that we need, right? A frontline hero that stuns, and it also allows us to be a barrier for these 2 heroes to apply their spells, okay? Because you're not thinking of just what your hero is, you're also thinking about what your team needs to do. In order for my Snap and my Mirana to succeed, they need somebody in front. The Snapfire needs someone to press Cookie on. The Mirana needs someone to line up an arrow. So let's see what they go with here. Alright, so we see a Brood. And then we'll pause again. So, we were talking about how Mirana is a type of hero that roams. Okay. So there's another picking philosophy, and this is more... I guess this is more high-level philosophy than it is just basic, pick your Sand King, stun, kill lane, which is still very viable. But the direction that the Brood's taking, and this is assuming that it's offlane, is since Mirana is a roaming hero, there is a good chance that Mirana is at some point going to just bail on you and go do something else. So when you pick Brood, what you're saying is, I know that this guy is going to be a moving piece of my lineup, and rather than pick a hero that's going to more or less lock him to top, because if I were to pick CK, or I were to pick Sand King, or I were to pick Mars, then the Mirana would have a lot more incentive to stay top. But if I don't offer a stun, that means that the Mirana is much more likely to roam and do something else. So with that being said, the Broodmother, once you hit 6, is very self-sufficient. She does not need anyone else around her to be able to farm. She does not need anybody else around her to be able to acquire whatever items or take the tier 1 or any of that stuff. So because this is a blind picking phase, the enemy team, Radiant, they obviously don't know there's a Brood. They have no idea. They can only guess and theorize based on what's showing. Now, if it were me, I might not expect Brood. I might have expected the straightforward stun, into kill. But Brood is still good because Brood still is that self-sufficient laner that allows the Mirana to play whatever game it is that she wants to play. So if she decides she wants to stay in the lane, that's okay. But now if she decides she wants to go somewhere else, that's okay too, and it doesn't leave the 3-player on an island and just say, okay, well, I picked a stun for you, and if you're not playing here, all of a sudden my stun doesn't matter anymore, right? There's 2 facets to this. The stun combo is great, but if the player that you're with isn't on your team, like in Discord or talking to you or whatever in game, and you're not communicating, and this guy just bails, all of a sudden you're just a guy with a stun laning potentially against 2 heroes, and that doesn't feel so good. So I would say the Brood is actually a safer pick in regards to it allows you to have a game regardless of what your support does. And in pubs, that's pretty important. So moving on, we're going to go ahead and see what the next picks are. I'm kind of curious to see how it goes. Okay, so there is a CK. So what does this mean? It means that it could be Brood mid, and it could be CK offlane, or it could be CK safe lane. Right now, Dire's draft has the advantage of lane ambiguity. At a high level, people know who plays what role a lot of the time. So for them, it might be more straightforward. Like you can see Armel's in this game on Radiant. So if these players are familiar with each other, they're probably also familiar with where they're going in advance. Now, I don't have that knowledge because I'm not this high MMR, but I also don't play in this region. I believe this is like a C game or something like that. So now we see another stun. We don't know where it's going exactly, but obviously we'll see through the rest of the draft and have a better idea of where it's going to go. But it is that front line, very tanky, eat some spells, let my other heroes apply their damage sort of hero. So this is, in my opinion, one of the, not necessarily underrated, but it's definitely not the most loved hero right now, but I'm telling you, CK is definitely strong. You can play it as a 1, you can play it as a 3. I've even seen people play it mid, periodically, and it does, like, okay. But CK, definitely very strong. So now, we have our frontline hero. We have our follow-up heroes. We have map pressure, and another aspect of the game that I hadn't really touched on just yet, but we will now, is wave clear. Snapfire, CK, Brood, Mirana. They all actually offer pretty good wave clear. CK didn't used to, but he now gets a cleave talent at level 15. So once you get that cleave, you can actually start hitting creeps pretty quickly, and it's what allows him to scale into the mid to late game and not kind of just get hindered down by his item progression. Because CKs have a tendency to want to go fight whenever they have Phantasm, which is fine. But nowadays, since you have that cleave, you actually become another source of killing creeps. So, what does that mean for Radiant? Because there is so much wave clear on Dire, and because there is just this presence of a Broodmother, it's going to be really hard to make plays because the creep waves are going to be shoved in a lot. So whenever the creeps are on your side of the map, it means every move that you make is much more telegraphed because there's not anything else happening, right? So they don't have to look at their own towers. No one's pushing a tier 1, no one's pushing a tier 2. All the waves are pushed past the river. Everyone's been in that game. The one where you are really scared to show, or you're always playing like whack-a-mole, like TPing around, oh, this tier 1's being hit, this tier 2's being hit, and it feels really chaotic and hard to make anything happen. It's the same at high level It's just that the people are a little bit better at dealing with it. So let's continue. We'll see what happens here for Radiant, see what their 2 picks are going into the second phase. Alright, so we got a mag. We're gonna wait for the other hero to be picked as well, and then we're gonna save a lot here for last pick, because last pick is very important. Okay, Clockwork. So to me, the Clockwork seems a bit strange. And the reason why I feel like it's strange is because Snapfire and Mirana, keep in mind, when this Clockwork picked his hero, he did not see CK, and he did not see Brood. So if you just like put your hand over those heroes, the only thing that he saw was Mirana Snap. Now, Clockwork is better against Snap than he is against Mirana, but Snap can still cookie out of cogs, and it's kind of just, it's a little bit weird for me. I can justify it and say, okay, Hookshot cancels Mortimer's kisses. That's just factually correct, right? If the Snapfire is ulting and you flare and you hookshot her, then you've removed a lot of her ability to apply damage in the fight, which is definitely strong, right? But there's another reason why I don't particularly like the Clockwork with the heroes that they have. 4 of the heroes on Radiant are melee strength heroes. 4 of them. So like Earth Spirit, Mag, Tiny, Clockwork, these are all melee strength. Now that's not always a bad thing, but it is important to keep in mind your ratio of heroes that go in versus heroes that stay in the back. Because a good team is going to have a balance of both. Like Dire's team, they have Brood, they have CK, these heroes play the front line. They have Snapfire, Mirana, these heroes play the back line. Now that doesn't mean that Dire are just going to win the game, but it does set yourself up to getting last phased, something brutal. Like, I don't know if Timber's banned, but if Timber was not banned, I would be very surprised if Dire didn't want to pick it, right? I mean, assuming, you know, the Broodmother is going either off lane or mid. Those are pretty much the only roles we ever see that hero in. If I'm Dire, I'm going, oh my god. They have 4 melee strength heroes. I just want to play like a Timber or an Earthshaker or whatever. Just anything that's going to punish the fact that all these heroes just want to group up. They want to hug each other. They want to hold hands. They want to hold my hand. All the ways that they apply damage is through being in melee range. All of them. So this is another way that you can look at the lineup and just be like, now that it is the last phase of picks, what is it that's going to be able to influence the game in a positive way for my team? And there are a couple of ways you can go about this. If you look at the enemy team and nothing immediately pops into your mind is, oh, this hero is going to be great, you know, because not everyone plays every hero, and that's fine. Then you can look at your own team and say, okay, what's gonna bring our draft to the next level? So if I'm looking at Dire and I say, I have this front line, I have a Brood, I have Mirana Snap, what is it that's gonna just make us pop off? I really feel as though that Dire's draft is so well-rounded that we actually don't need to pick anything super specific. So if I'm looking at my own team, I'm thinking, okay, I'm pretty wide open here. You know, I could do like, probably not Puck because Puck would get bursted. So now we have to start looking at individual matchups, right? Like Tiny and Earth Spirit are really good against Puck. But I do think some sort of area control hero would be strong as long as it doesn't get immediately killed by like a blink stun toss or, you know, some sort of Earth Spirit initiation, sort of like that. So my first would be, if you're comfortable playing Puck, Puck is still okay because Coil is very strong against this many melee. You do run the risk of dying, but I think coiling is extremely potent with the follow-up that we have. It allows CK to hit heroes. It gives Snapfire's ultimate a place to be able to just, you know, blop it down and apply all that damage, which is great for us. We could do something like Invoker. Invoker is really good control because they're 4 melee, right? So when you throw a tornado, good chance you're going to hit a bunch of people. Strength heroes also have low mana pool, which means if I want to play Quas Wex, you know, I want to play this tempo, I can build a Vessel, which is going to be great against what Radiant have. They're not going to have any natural Dispel on their team, which makes Vessel as an item really strong to purchase. So I'm thinking like maybe Quas Wex Invoker, maybe Timber, maybe Puck, because all these heroes have a really good way of playing the game against what is visible. So, okay, I have all these like heroes in my mind about I want to pick them because I feel like they're good against the enemy team. But I know that my team is well balanced, so I'm kind of open, right? I'm thinking, okay, this feels pretty good. I can kind of just pick whatever, and it's going to probably be fine. That's how I feel about Dire. I look at Radiant and I go, my team would really benefit from some sort of damage that doesn't come from melee range. Like, I want to play a hero that's going to abuse this front line. Like, I have so much beef in front of me. So much beef. I have Mag, Tiny, Earthspear, Clockwork. Not only are all these heroes strength, but they all want to go in. The only guy who doesn't want to go in first is probably Mag, and that's just because he wants to set up for a better RP, right? So I look at that, and I immediately make the connection in my brain. All right, I got frontline. I got thickness. I got initiators. I can pick some hero that's really high damage. You know, the TA is probably one of the most common heroes that you're going to see right now in the mid lane that just really, really do a lot of damage. You could pick... Well, this is all assuming that it's going to be a mid hero, by the way. It's very possible that either the Tiny or the Mag are mid, and that this pick coming out right now is going to be a safe lane, but I believe Armel plays mid. So I'm thinking it's going to be a mid based on the player, that he's a pro player. And he's probably going to pick some hero that is going to sit in the back and just chunk people. That's my assumption. For Dire, it's a bit harder to predict because, again, these heroes kind of have all their bases covered, whereas Radiant are lacking in that hero that just dumps damage into the initiation, because that's usually what you want in a game. You want a way to start a fight, you want a way to apply damage, and then you want a way to get objectives. Not necessarily in that order, but those are all really good things to have. So with that being said, we're going to continue. And we're looking at these picks, and we're thinking, okay, beef, and then more well-rounded, lots of lane pressure. And we'll see how each team handles this.
Yeah, 5 seconds left now.
And as I have not seen the entirety of the draft, again, I don't know what they're going to pick, but when we see the heroes, we'll talk through it. Armel doing a bit of thinking here. Let's see what he picks.
Ember Spirit.
Okay, so he picks Ember. And then, okay, so we are going to get a Timber. I thought Timber may have been banned in this game, but it's just way too good of a Timber game to skip. So the Timber makes sense. Bunch of melee strength heroes. You're a Timber. You naturally build tanky. Let's go one level deeper on the Timber and say, okay, obviously things like Whirling Death and Chakram are great because they just do a ton of damage, and Whirling Death reduces your primary stat. But why else is Timber so good this game? It's because the way you itemize on this hero is naturally just to get tanky. You build Hood, you build Lotus, you build... Sometimes Timbers even build Greaves. You know, you're building all these items in your inventory to absorb damage. You want them to go on you. You want them to go on you because they're going to initiate, and they're going to do all this damage to your hero who is the best at receiving it, and then you're going to also deal a huge amount of damage back to them just through your kit. Like, you don't scale in terms of your damage output per se. I mean, sure, you can buy Shard, you can get Aghanims for the double Chakram, but typically what you're doing is you're scaling to live, and then your kit is your damage the entire game. So that makes this hero kind of like the apex of counters for me. Like, I can't think of a better pick than Timber, just in terms of how easy of a game it is for him to play, and also how he's going to itemize. Now, the more interesting one to me is Timber. So let's talk about Ember. Did I say Timber? I meant Ember. Let's talk about Ember and why it is a very, very solid pick this game. So we spoke about the strength heroes and their willingness to go in. And now we're looking at a hero that offers a lot of damage, which is great. You know, he's another applicator of damage. And this is a hero who not only is very elusive because of his kit, like Sleight of Fist you can use to dodge. You're obviously going to have Fire Remnants when you get higher levels, so you can get in and out of the fight. But he can scale his damage a lot with Mag, right? So this pick actually checks a couple of boxes, and this is how you know, this is how you absolutely know that a last pick is good, is when it's not only good against the enemy team's heroes, but it's good with what they have. So he's going to get empowered. He's going to be able to sleight of fist. He's going to be able to clear spiders. The initiation that Dire have is not instant stuns, right? So what does that mean? When you're playing against heroes that have blink, or you're playing against heroes that have a sleight of fist disjoint mechanic like that, if you don't have some form of a hex or a very quick way of getting on him, it means it's very easy for him to play around the fight. So things like Cookie, CK Stun, Marana Arrow, what do they all have in common? They have travel time. The Cookie takes time to stun. The CK Stun takes time for the projectile to hit your hero. The Marana Arrow has to travel through the air to hit you. So what this means is Ember's kit, Sleight of Fist specifically, is fantastic for being able to avoid these things. And he doesn't have to commit either. I think one of the worst mistakes you can make in this type of game is picking a hero that commits to the fight when you already have 4 heroes that do the same thing. So this is... I didn't think about Ember in my mind when I was looking at Dire's team. I just want to make that clear. It didn't come to my attention. But when I saw it, I immediately knew that it was a good pick. And the other cool thing about this hero specifically, if we look at Dire's lineup, there's actually only one hero that builds armor. And that's Timber, right? Like, CK might get an AC later on into the game, but the rest of those heroes, unless the Brood's going some Pipe Greaves build, they're not going to be high armor. So you can do like an Orb of Corrosion Deso build, you can go crit, you can get empowered from the mag, and you can just pop off a Sleight of Fist. Like, this is a very, very good Ember game because they don't have good catch for you. So there's a bunch of different picking styles, I would say. But the one thing that's almost universal is that when it comes to last pick, there is usually a very good and a very bad pick. And again, it's based off information. We know what the enemy team's heroes do. We know what our team does. So what is the thing to enable my team the best while still being good against the enemy team? And Ember is a fantastic choice, in my opinion. So that is the entirety of the draft. If I looked at this and I said, who's going to win? Honestly, I'm not sure. I would say this draft is roughly 50-50, even with the Timber last pick, because I think Ember is also just phenomenal for this game. Empower plus Ember into these heroes specifically, they're going to like, Dire's going to have to itemize to kill this Ember, or this Ember's going to kill everybody. That's how I see the game. But I could also see it as, you know, Timber and CK have really good lanes, and the Brood has a really good lane. Maybe their laning phase is strong enough to circumvent the Ember with the Empower, and maybe like the Tiny carry, which I think it's Tiny carry just by looking at this. I haven't seen how the lanes work out, but this video is specifically just for drafting. We're not even going to look at the lanes. I just want to try to convey some information to you guys so that you can apply that information to your games and hopefully have some more success when you're picking. So I hope that this video has been somewhat educational for you guys. Again, this is just a pub game. It's like a 9K average C game. I saw a game and I was like, you know what? Let's just pop it open and see what we see. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys want to catch me live, you can do it on twitch.tv/Draskyl, same as the YouTube. I hope you guys are all having a great one, and we'll see you real soon.